Artists, welcome to another edition of Dallas Social Distancing Toastmasters. I will be the Zoom facilitator for this evening. And at this point, I want to remind everybody, if you're not speaking, if you don't have a posture monitor or a counter roll, and you're not speaking, please keep yourself on mute. If you fall off of mute and you're not in one of those positions, then I will do my best to mute you on my own. And please note that when you are speaking for prepared speeches as well as for our table topics and evaluations, in this case, one evaluation, the timer this evening is going to be Mr. Dagan Newland, so make sure that you have him visible on your screen, whether you pin him to the screen or you just have him visible, either way. At this point, I would like to direct you to our agenda for the evening at www.dallassocialtoastmasters.com. You can find our current agenda there. On the homepage, over to the right-hand side, you'll see under where it says Members section, you'll see current agenda. And if you click on that, that will bring up the PDF of tonight's agenda, which you can save, just have up on part of your screen. If you have time and it's easy for you to do, maybe print it out, whatever you want to do at this point, but note that it will be there for your access. And at this point, I'm going to, since we don't have any guests, I'm not going to push this over to our president. I'm going to push this directly to our Toastmaster for the evening. Please help me to welcome Madam Toastmaster, Tanya Howard.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, our theme is Hispanic Heritage Month because beginning September 15th, we are celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month all the way through October 15th. And this holiday is to celebrate the culture of our Hispanic members and to celebrate the independence of at least 5 Latin American countries that earned their independence within that month time. So Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico. So a lot of those countries earned their independence within that September 15th through the October 15th time period. And so it's an opportunity for them to celebrate their independence, similar to how we celebrate our independence as a country as well too. And so this evening I wanted to just share some interesting facts about people and culture just to honor the Hispanic Heritage Month. But to begin, we will start with our duty holders for the evening, and I would like to introduce our timer, Mr. Dagan Newland, who is also our vote counter. Dagan?
All right, so as first, my duty as timer is to time various sections of the meetings, and that's going to be the prepared speeches, table topics, and evaluators. So pretty much, you know, the table topics is 1 to 2 minutes, which you must hit 1 minute to qualify, and then you have 30 seconds to wrap up after the 2 minutes. And evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes, in which you have, you know, leeway of 30 seconds on your side. So when you get to your qualifying time on any of these sections, you'll see the green. For example, on the table topics, you'll get green at 1, yellow at 1.5, 2 at red, then have 30 seconds to wrap up. Evaluations, you'll hit 2, you get green, 2.5 yellow, and red at 3 minutes, and then have 30 seconds to wrap up. And I'll have to go, sorry, I have to go back and look at the time frames for the speakers, but when they hit their minimum time frame, they'll hit the green. Halfway through, I'll see yellow, and at the end, they'll get red. And then again, have 30 seconds to wrap up. Now, when it comes to vote counter, you know, I'll see when the different sections of the voting, you'll be be called upon to vote, you'll send a private chat to me as who you thought was the best speaker for that section. And at the end of the meeting, I will let you know who won. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Great, thank you, sir. Tonight, our posture bell monitor is Mark Sims, who's also our grammarian.
Thank you, Tanya. As posture monitor, I will be looking for any type of gestures or body language or some nonverbal that takes away from the speaker's words. And I'll also be looking for good gestures, like dramatic gestures one might use during a speech. So I'll make notes, and then when called upon by the general evaluator, we'll report. As grammarian, one of my duties is to introduce the word of the day. And the word of the day for tonight is alacrity. That is a noun. It means eagerness or speed. As in, Mark's boss said he wanted to talk about Mark's raise, so Mark moved with alacrity. And I will, again, listen for uses of that word, and remember you need to use it during table topics, and I'll hold it up during the table topics. And then as grammarian, I'll be listening for any grammatical lapses or any really useful or good phrases or expressive phrases that really spice up your remarks. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. And last but not least, this evening, Rob Giles is the awe counter.
Thank you very much, Madam Toastmaster. As the eye counter, I'm going to be listening for crutch words or long pregnant pauses, crutch words such as you know, so things that might fill in where they don't necessarily need to fill in. They're not part of your intention when you're going into what you're about to speak about. And when I hear those, hopefully you'll hear this, but I will do my best to click. And hopefully you'll hear that as you're speaking. I will not do that during the prepared speeches, but I will take notes throughout the entirety of the meeting, and I will give a report at the end of the meeting when called upon by the general evaluator. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. So our Hispanic American friends, there are 60 million in the United States, and they are the largest minority group in our country. And Spanish is the second most spoken language, with over 400 million people speaking Spanish. It's second behind Chinese, Mandarin Chinese. And there are 21 countries who have Spanish as their official language. And there are a lot of schools now who are encouraging our students to learn a second language, have a dual language program, and teaching our students how to speak Spanish, especially here in Texas, with us having an opportunity to actually utilize the language with our neighbors. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to engage with people in using our second language of Spanish. This evening, we have two speakers tonight. And our first speaker is Mark Schroeder, and he is being evaluated by Lee King. Lee, if you will introduce Mark's speech for us.
Yes, Mark will.
I think you're muted.
There we go. Okay. All right. Mark will be speaking on the topic of developing a communication plan. His purpose is as follows. The purpose for this project is for the member to prepare a developing and communication plan. And his time is 5 to 7 minutes.
Great. This time, you'll help me to welcome Mark Schrader. Make a plan statement. Mark Schrader.
Give me just 1 second because I need to get a screen share ready to go. And screen. Beginning. Good evening, everyone. Tonight it's going to be a little bit different because normally our job is to get together here and to do communication. Tonight I'm going to do what amounts to meta communication because I'm going to be talking about communicating a message. And that's what the goal of this particular project is. This project is called Write a Communication Plan. This is the form that I'm supposed to fill out as a result of doing this particular project. And I'm going to just go over real briefly what's here and what I'm going to pick for my project goals, the message that I want to communicate. What's interesting here, of course, is you'll see 3 columns. There's a column labeled primary. Those are the people who are most affected. Secondary, usually those are people who hear through the primary audience. And then there's tertiary. They have very little interest or access to the message, but they're still potentially affected by it. And there are 2 pages to this form. First one, of course, is what are your goals? My goal in this particular case, I am now in between 2 groups, one group of which is an engineering group and the other group is a support group. So I have decided that in this particular case, the support group and their managers, they're going to be the primary because I've got to get them interested in fixing a problem that is in our product that is going to be a very large customer dissatisfier. With regard to what message I need to communicate, we've pretty much talked about the message, but some of the other questions are why am I communicating that? What actions do I hope to cause the various groups to adopt? And how will they be affected by the message? The second page of this, what communication channels do you use? And if it's online or something like that, what media do you use? Is it an online bulletin board? Is it email? Is it a Zoom meeting? Exactly what do you use? And then there's some timelines. Timelines are supposed to have measurable milestones that you achieve with each of these and how frequently do you expect to be in contact? And then finally, how do I evaluate my efforts? So I have gone and filled out this entire form. I could spend a lot of time on each and every one of the little boxes here, but I think all of us would like for me to get done with this with alacrity and not be here until about 2 a.m. in the morning. So I'm only going to focus on a few things. And in particular, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk a little bit and think about my primary and secondary audience and my tertiary audience, because that was interesting to me. My primary audience, the problem I've got is I've got a bunch of engineers who would be very happy to solve a problem if they were allowed the resources and time to do it. That makes my primary the people who are holding those resources and the time to do it. So I've got to get buy-in from those people. They're the ones who are going to allocate the resources necessary for the secondary group, which are my engineers, to actually buy into the value of a solution and go implement it. The tertiary group, for me, is very interesting in this case because these are the people who have little interest or access to my message. For the most part, these are going to be the customers and the support people that honestly do not know that this even happened. If this is done well, they don't get a message, they don't need a message, because it is 100% seamless and behind the covers. We fix a problem that they just won't see anymore. And that's probably a little bit unusual. For a lot of messages, that's not going to be the case. But in my particular case, a job well done means that they're not going to see anything. With regard to other things here, I thought it was also interesting the focus that was here. The focus, it was on the milestones more than anything else, because the thing on the milestones, that's this column, the one right after timeline. I found it really, really interesting that if you look at the order between the first group, the primary group, and the secondary group, for me, they are almost reversed. This is because in order to get the interest of the management and the people who are going to have to allocate the resources and put, quite frankly, other work on hold in order to get this done, for the most part, I have to go and put things into an online system, and then I have to start all the emails and meetings with those people in order to get their buy-in. That's basically the order that I have to do that in. For the secondary, we've got to get our ducks in a line. We've got to get all of our ducks in a row, find out enough data to prove that we've really got a problem in the first place, and then we can go do some of the other things. So I was a little bit surprised to find that there are going to be a lot more meetings with the managers early on, and then those are going to not go by the wayside, but they're going to decrease in frequency once we do get the buy-in. And I'm still probably going to have to work with engineering all the way through it almost every day in order to make sure that we get a solution that, once it's implemented, is technically sound. So the value of this has been interesting to me. I maybe should have picked something that would have involved a tertiary audience that had a little bit more involvement. Because like I said, for the most part, if I do my job right, the tertiary audience doesn't have any real involvement in my message because I've insulated them for all practical purposes from the message by making the issue disappear. But that is what my job is today. So I thought this was an interesting project. As you can see, I did fill out all of this. One of my requirements for this is to show this to the VP of Ed. VP of Ed, please notice this. It's one of my requirements to make sure that you see it, which you have now seen all of it. It's a very good way of going through and organizing your thoughts and of figuring out exactly what you need to present to who, coming up with timelines and goals toward conveying your message. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. Mr. Timer, did our speaker meet his time?
Yes, he did.
Okay, great. Our next speaker is Karen Lee, and the evaluation process will be round robin, which I believe is anyone in the meeting can provide feedback. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And Karen, would you tell us the title and the time for your speech?
Okay. The title is COVID-19 Humor, and the time is 5 to 7 minutes.
Great. Help me to welcome Karen Lee, COVID-19 Humor.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. In late March, my neighbor across the hall told me about the government shutdown. My sister called me at the same time to tell me about the government shutdown. What is a government shutdown? Is the sky falling? Since we don't have a vaccine for COVID, we've been given 3 simple practices to do to keep us safe during the pandemic. The first one is to wear a mask. And the second is to wash our hands or use alcohol sanitizer. And the third, social distancing. Why do we have to wear these masks? I can't even breathe. I can't even talk in these masks. Whose idea was it for us to wear these masks in the first place? You say The masks are to protect me to protect others from my germs. I think it's every woman for herself. When I walk in my neighborhood, I see masks hanging from rearview mirrors. I don't see fuzzy dice hanging from rearview mirrors anymore. I also get a kick out of watching the drivers alone in their cars wearing their masks. My 2-year-old niece didn't like wearing the mask in the beginning. She wears the mask now, but she doesn't like it. I don't think any of us like wearing masks. The second practice is hand washing, and when soap and water is not available, we can use the sanitizer. When I was little, I drank from a hose. I also ate dirt. And I think I turned out okay. And the biggest practice is social distancing. When we go into public places, we're supposed to stay at least 6 feet away from each other. How is a single person supposed to date? I saw an internet cartoon, and the couple were wearing masks in a restaurant. Their tables were 6 feet apart. They went on another date, and they were in a canoe, and they were wearing protective clothing from head to toe. They were spaced 6 feet apart in the canoe. Fast forward to their wedding, and the officiant says, "You may elbow bump your wife." Have any of you been to the doctor recently during the pandemic? I went to the doctor recently. I'm sitting on the examination table, and the doctor comes in. He's dressed in full hazmat gear, and he's standing 6 feet away from me, and he's attempting to examine me. I said, "Doc, I'm over here." In conclusion, we've been given 3 simple practices that we can do to keep ourselves safe. 1, to wear the mask. Hand washing or using the alcohol sanitizer. And social distancing. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Karen. Timer, did our speaker achieve their goal?
Yes, she did.
Okay. At this time, you can vote on the best speaker, and you will send your vote to Dave, is it Dagan?
Dagan?
To Dagan Newland. Just send your vote to Dagan Newland for the best speaker this evening. So I also wanted to spend a little time just talking about a couple of figures, Latin figures who I think have made some historic achievement in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. Our Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, she was the first Hispanic member of the court. She's from New York and her family is originally from Puerto Rico. She was nominated in 2009 for the Supreme Court and was accepted in the Supreme Court in 2009. And then our first Hispanic woman in the world to travel to space was Ellen Ochoa. and she currently serves as a director at the Space Center in Houston. We also have some pretty amazing Hispanic members in athletics as well, and soccer, also called football in other countries, boxing and baseball, like Messi, Sammy Sosa, Oscar de la Hoya, and Rafael Nadal in tennis. So there are lots of interesting Hispanic figures that we can also celebrate during this time and find more information about that maybe you weren't aware of before. Now, with a little alacrity, I now hand off to our Table Topics Master, Rob Giles, to host Table Topics.
Thank you very much, Madam Toastmaster. Table Topics is here to help us to think on our feet, so to speak, to be able to speak extemporaneously, impromptu. It helps with interviews, sometimes with social engagements. So it helps us to form our thoughts in a fairly quick manner and present them in an organized manner. So Table Topics is really good for all of us in general for life across the board, I feel. For Table Topics, in order to qualify to win, you're going to have to meet two requirements. The first one is to use the word of the day. So when you're talking, you may be speaking with alacrity. You have to use alacrity when you're speaking in order to qualify. Second thing that you're going to have to do is to meet the time requirement, and that is to at least go 1 minute and go no more than 2 minutes and 30 seconds. The timer expressed this when he was given his description at the beginning of the meeting, so keep that in mind, and also be sure to keep the timer either pinned to your screen or at least in your view at all times. And the timer tonight, again, is Dagan Newland. If Dagan is chosen to speak, I'm going to ask either Mark Schroeder, if he can, to take over at that point as timer. If not, then I'll take over myself. So our theme for the meeting is Hispanic Heritage Month. Great, perfect timing, obviously. As Tanya said, it started 9:15 to 10:15. I actually read that it actually started out as Hispanic Heritage Week, and that was created by Lyndon B. Johnson. And then Ronald Reagan expanded it to a month when he was in office. So it's pretty incredible overall as far as all of that is concerned. I think it's great. I'm all for bringing a little bit of culture to our society, especially to have a little focus because, one, it gives us something to do. Now, unfortunately, during these times, it's a little tough. The one thing that tries to get incorporated with any kind of heritage month, week, day, whatever it might be, is food. I would like to ask Mark Sims, what Hispanic food is your favorite, or what Hispanic food would you maybe like to give a try that you haven't at this point in time? Mark Sims.
I would default towards Tex-Mex. I enjoy fajitas and obviously enjoy Mexican food restaurants, the chips and salsa. So at work, if someone recommends going to a Mexican food restaurant at lunchtime, I'll move with alacrity to go there. Beyond that, I'm not all that original. I mean, of course, tacos in addition to fajitas is what I would consider basics. But as far as a real, let's say, that maybe real Mexican food as opposed to Tex-Mex, I really haven't branched out all that much. I usually keep my food choices simple. although I do also like sopapillas and at the Tex-Mex restaurant visits. I will try and talk myself out of getting one, but usually I will give in to temptation, even though I've already had a big meal, and get a sopapilla, again, usually with alacrity once I make the commitment to do so. So I'm not the best person in the world or most knowledgeable person about the different food choices, but I do enjoy Tex-Mex. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate the answer. I used to work for a Tex-Mex restaurant, and that was one of my favorite things. We had the sopapillas, and they had the cinnamon on them, but we also had, the honey drip or dip or whatever you wanted, the little bottle of that you use. We had strawberry, had a few different ones that people could use. So that was something that at the end of the night, generally we would have at least one or two of those because there's always something left over. So I can definitely be in with you on that if we end up at a Tex-Mex restaurant. Food is not the only thing that is expressed or used to celebrate during the Hispanic Heritage Month. Other things are parades, concerts. I don't know how much of that stuff is going on during the pandemic, probably a little bit more than it would have a couple months ago. But I would like to ask, would you be attending one of these things, either whether it's a food fair, a concert, or a parade? And if so, why? Which one of these and why? I'm going to ask this actually to Dagan. So Mark, if you can take over on timing, that would be wonderful.
I'm prepared.
If not, I've got it.
I'm prepared.
Dagan.
Okay, so first I actually want to say, every month there's always some kind of awareness thing. Like obviously it's Hispanic Awareness Month, but it's also Suicide Awareness Month, which actually should be called really Suicide Prevention Month because, we really want to try to prevent it. But so if anybody knows of either kind of awareness month during this month, put it in the chat and let everybody know too. But as for parades, I'm not very Alacrity. I can't even pronounce it. Alacrity. Oh, sorry. I tried to say it there. But anyway, I'm not very eager to go to a parade. Especially this time. There's pandemic. Matter of fact, even if there wasn't a pandemic, I wouldn't really want to go to a parade because I'm just not really big into crowds. I mean, I like to help support things like that. Like when it's that big old parade they have down there in the Ozona Street, back to that street where Ozona's on, that big old Irish parade they have, that's always jam-packed and they always got blocked off traffic, for miles. Matter of fact, any kind of parade anywhere or thing like that, it's just, they got everything blocked off. It's hard to get around. So, I just don't like big crowds like that. So, no, I wouldn't be going to anything like that. Back to you, Table Topic Master.
Thank you very much, Dagan. I totally can understand and appreciate being in that huge crowd, especially on St. Patrick's Day along Greenville Avenue. It is crazy. I think that really they shouldn't have kids there, although that's probably a very special time for kids, but I think it probably takes a drink or two before you can get there in order to deal with everything. So it is definitely crazy times. And I wish that I was more aware of some of the parades or some of the concerts that were going on for Hispanic Heritage Month. And I think that I'm going to look into that a little bit more. So I really appreciate Tanya bringing this a little bit to the forefront here, especially because the month is really actually covering 2 months. It's, September 15th to October 15th. So it's a long time for one, but definitely you think about culture and I think it's good to bring it in so we can experience it. It's fun. We may not have to make our country this, but we can at least bring some of that spirit, a different angle for everything that we've lived through, especially, now we could really use it, but unfortunately it's a little counter to what we're going through. I would say you see that, I definitely have seen it for for the Irish with that parade. But I would like to ask, what other nationality or what other culture might you like to see be celebrated in our country that isn't, or possibly isn't? And this question is going to go to Tanya. Tanya?
I think that we all should have alacrity, that is a mouthful, alacrity when it comes to being willing to celebrate and learn about every culture, Asian culture, Italian culture, Irish culture. I think it's just important for us to learn about other people. And I think it's an opportunity for us to see what we have in common, and then also the things that are different about the way that we celebrate and our traditions. And I think we really realize that we have more things in common than there are different. And maybe if we really spent time enjoying and celebrating all the cultures, then it would decrease the disharmony that we might have when we think about people being so different, because at the heart of it, we're not really that different. We really have more things that are alike amongst us than are different, and then that could benefit all of us. So I say, let's celebrate them all. Let's learn about them all and have a better understanding. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I totally agree with you. I think that we would all have a much funner time. It would be much more enjoyable, especially if we had these things to look forward to each month. I always look forward to the food festivals and things like that. And I think it's, the more of that kind of thing that we have, the easier it'll be to get through every week to the weekend so we can celebrate some of these things. I think that culture is very important. And I would like for someone to tell us about some part of the Hispanic culture that you enjoy. We've heard a lot of things, but is there something specific that you really enjoy about the Hispanic culture? This one goes to John Vessels.
Good evening, everybody. Repeat the question. What do I enjoy about the Spanish culture?
The Hispanic culture, yes. What is there something that you really enjoy about the Hispanic culture? Something specific?
Well, the colorfulness of it. Now, I go on cruises a lot, or I used to. Now you can't cruise for now since the pandemic's going on. But I enjoy the Hispanic community. We go to Cozumel every year. I've gone to Guatemala. I've gone to Costa Rica, and we go to Belize, but that's not a Spanish culture. That's a British culture. But anyway, I enjoy the culture. I enjoy the last time we went out to an older community where they had Mayan ruins, and they talked about a lot there about the culture and the history and the religious portions of it and the family tree and everything. And I enjoy all the people in the culture and watching them dance, and there's all kinds of people, doing everything and expressing, aspects of the Hispanic culture. So I always have an alacrity to meet and greet with those kind of people and see what they're doing and learn about their community. I thought that religious thing that they were talking about, there's a tree of life and there's a reverse tree of life for the different levels, and it kind of goes back to the same like Dante's Inferno. It's kind of interesting that we have this overlap of all kinds of beliefs that are just slightly off than someplace else. So there has to be some kind of connection between all of us. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you very much, John. I agree. I think it kind of sounds like we're all in agreement that, culture is a great thing, and it's great to experience a lot of these other cultures. That's what our country was founded on, was bringing, people in from all these other cultures. And I think over time, I think we have learned to celebrate more and more. And as Tanya mentioned, maybe there's more that we have to do. And I think it'll be fun to explore that. And hopefully our country will move in that direction a little bit faster with more alacrity. At this point, I'm going to end our table topic session, and I'm going to ask our timer, or our timers, I guess, did all of our table topic contestants qualify on time?
Yes, Mark sent me my time, and yes, we all qualified on time.
Excellent, great. And the other thing for qualification is for our grammarian, and that is for the word of the day. Mr. Grammarian, did all of our contestants use the word of the day with alacrity?
Everyone used the word of the day, and I'd like a point of order. When I show the sign like this, what I see is the word is backwards. Can y'all read it?
Yeah, it's correct. We can see it.
Oh,
That's because you have to change your video to unmirror.
oh, okay.
Totally.
But it is strictly for you. It's not for us. It just changes. It changes so that when you go left to right, it looks right to you.
Okay.
But we see it correctly.
Well, good. Otherwise, I would have looked like the world's stupidest person holding up a backwards sign. Thank you. Everyone used the word of the day again. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So we have 4 contestants. They all meet both qualifications for timing and for word of the day. I'll go over the contestants, and then at that point you can send a vote for who you thought did the best. I want to say those questions were not the easiest questions. So kudos to all of our contestants for their great answers. I appreciate it. The first contestant was Mr. Mark Sims, who talked about some of his favorite Hispanic food. He loves Tex-Mex and especially fajitas. And then we had Dagan, who was expressing not a great interest to go among great crowds, i.e. the Irish parade, the St. Patrick's Day parade. So he talked about that as far as what he would like to do or not do, I guess, in this case. We had our third contestant, which was Tanya, who expressed that perhaps we need to just have a lot more of those either monthly cultural celebrations or weekly, whatever it might be, but we need to add as many as we can. And then finally, John, who talked about just his love for the culture and what he has experienced in his time traveling, doing some cruising. And those are the 4 contestants. So let's go ahead and send your vote to Dagan Newland in a private chat. And at this point, I don't know if our Toastmaster, Tanya, do you want to take the mic back, or do you want me to hand this over to our general evaluator?
Yes, I just had one last note that I was wondering that if Mexican food is a favorite, because I don't know about you, I eat it every week. And so I searched and I discovered that pizza, steak, and chicken are considered the top 3 dishes. But I've never heard of Pizza Wednesday. I don't know about you, but I know there's a Taco Tuesday. And so I'm always looking forward to going to Taco Tuesday. And so I might disagree with that. I do like pizza, but Taco Tuesday is the place to be. And my favorite food too, I was thinking, does margaritas count? Because that is a treat. So at this time, I would like to hand it over to our general evaluator, Mr. John Vessels.
I have to clap for myself. I'm clapping for Tanya. Thank you, Tanya. What a wonderful night, and I agree with you. I love to have Mexican food. My sister Mary, when she goes and travels anywhere, if we are all going to get together and have food, it's going to be Mexican food. We're going to Borders or El Chico or El Phoenix or someplace like that, because she is a Mexican foodaholic. And I personally like it too. My favorite thing is very simply a combination burrito with extra meat from Taco Bueno. That to me is the best. But I like all kinds. Anyway, back to the evaluation of the meeting and not my appetite. So would like to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and start with our evaluators for this evening for I never say that. Our speaker tonight, Mark Schroeder, is being evaluated by Lee King. So Lee King, would you go ahead and give us your evaluation of Mark's speech?
Mark, it is always a pleasure to have the opportunity to evaluate you, and tonight was another. I felt like you did a really good job with your speech today. I'll share a few things that you did well, give a couple of suggestions, and then conclude everything with one thing that I thought you did really well. First of all, your speech was very organized. You told us exactly what you were planning on talking about. You explained the importance of this particular process and how you used it in your personal life, all of which are very important when giving a speech. A couple of things that I thought might be worth considering. First would be to organize a speech in that a way that would encompass all of the different levels of communication, because I noticed that there was the primary, the secondary. You were able to give some examples of that, but you weren't really able to explain much about the tertiary. So I think it would be good to give an example that really uses all of those. My other suggestion to you would be to tell us a little bit about what you learned from this project and how you feel like you're a better communicator because of it. I didn't really get the sense of that. I got a very good idea of the process and how it can be used and the benefits, but I'm not really seeing much in the way of what you learned from this project. The one thing that I really think you did very well, though, was being able to share with us your board and explain everything. So I thought that that was very helpful, and I would encourage you to continue working on all of those in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Yay, thank you. Now, the next evaluation we're going to do is going to be the round robin, because everybody's just going to give Karen an earful about what we thought about her practice for her speech tonight. And I'm going to go first.
Hold on, John. Lee qualified on time.
Okay. First thing I'm going to go on to is Karen. I like improvements that you've made in your discussion. I did see one thing that I would throw in there. When you talked about the sky is falling, like your intro, and then the next thing you knew, we were talking about the 3 types of COVID-19. I think there kind of needs to be a blend at the end of that, where at the end of the sky is falling, you said this COVID-19 pandemic or something to tag it. But also we're going from the sky is falling into there are these 3 things that we have to do. So just one little sentence on what is crashing and why is the sky is falling. And we're all being chicken littles. No, we're not supposed to be. Anyway, so that's the thing. Otherwise, I think that, changes that you made are improving. And I think it was better tonight than it was last week. And I thank you. Now, who next?
I'll go.
Tanya. Tanya's going to go. Go, Tanya.
Okay. I didn't see last week's speech, but I thought your gestures were really great. I liked that you brought the props in too, were great visuals. I would just say continue to work on your pacing. It seemed like there were some long pauses, especially at the beginning, long gaps between your speaking. And so just continue to work on you know, with your pacing and having smooth speech throughout the speech. I heard it mostly at the beginning. It seemed like you were still thinking about your next thing to say, but I enjoyed your speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Dagan, you're unmuted.
Yes, thank you. So, honestly, I did see your speech last week, and I know Tanya just mentioned about the pacing, which was what I was going to bring up as well, but I think the pacing was actually better than last time. So I think you have improved on it, but just need to work on it a little bit more. But also afraid if your pacing gets a little better, because you just made time of 5 minutes. So if your pacing got even better, the speech will probably be even a little shorter. So you might want to even may add a little bit to your speech. So you, with the pacing better, you make sure you get hit time frame and as great idea. You took the feedback from last time, by adding props, and you kind of use those props, during your speech. So, that was great. So just keep up that and just work on the pacing. That's what I got.
Thank you, Dagan. What, Sims? You're not muted. Did you have something to say?
Yes. And Karen, very good gestures. And during the general evaluation, or further on at the duty holders report, I'll go into that a little more. Especially like at the very end when you left the room to demonstrate the social distancing. That was unexpected and nice. What you could consider doing is, since you still have some time, to just continue to try and think of additional funny ideas. Like one really freaky thing that we deal with these days is think of baseball games or some sporting events where there are not people in the stands, but there are pictures or cutouts, or just cardboard cutouts of people in these stands, kind of like fake fans. I don't know, maybe there's a way to work that into another joke, because on a humorous speech, any additional laugh you can get would be beneficial. But thank you. I didn't get to hear it last week because I was having technical difficulties, but I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I'm actually one of those cutouts at one of the Rangers games. And I'll send that picture one day. Now, go ahead, Rob. I know you have something to say.
I think, I think, Karen, you did, I think you improved upon last week. So kudos to that. Incorporating what Lee had suggested with the props, that was great. I think also what Mark, just to kind of add on to what Mark had said, one of the things that I kind of noticed is that you have a heavier amount of material for the mask portion and a heavier amount of material for the social distancing portion, but a small amount for the sanitizer and hand washing. What you might do is to pull in what Mark was talking about and say, how are these cardboard cutouts supposed to wash their hands? Or something along those lines, just an idea. A way to actually build that material for that particular point and bring in some new information or new material like Mark had suggested, or something else. But along those, I would say if you're going to build in that point, if you could, but that would be my recommendation. But I think you're doing great. I think keep working on it, and you're just going to continue to get better. So good job
What
tonight.
about the whole washing for 20 seconds and doing the count 1, 2, or singing the happy birthday song, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
To show that you're doing your 2-minute or your 20-second, that could build up your time too with your pacing. If you say happy birthday are one of the ways to remember that you're supposed to do it for 20 seconds. And maybe
just don't sing the whole song or else you will go over time.
Right.
And since Mark Sims brought up that, here's one too. I'll get to you in a minute, second.
That's fine.
Schroeder. I think it's interesting that now when you watch like a football game, you hear all the applause and cheers and there's not a soul in the place. Okay. I think that's pretty hilarious. Mr. Schroeder, what have you got for Karen?
Well, first of all, I'm still thinking about those sopapillas with the sugar and the cinnamon on them. I got to tell you, I pick up a bottle and I would squeeze all the alacrity that I could onto those things until it was just dripping off. All right, so for Karen, I like the pacing. The pacing was much better. I noticed, I think, only one spot where I thought that it almost seemed like you may have lost your place or were looking for where you needed to pick back up. That was how long the pause seemed to me. So, but it was definitely a lot better than last time. A lot of it was much smoother. Like the props are an improvement. The other things that I noticed, I don't know whether I was just listening a little more carefully and technically this time or what, but I picked up a few other things. You have to be careful to put the thing that gets the laugh at the end, I believe. For instance, you can't say something like, I really miss seeing fuzzy dice in cars because I don't seem to see any fuzzy dice in cars anymore. You've put the funny part, fuzzy dice, in the middle. Doesn't work because they're not going to laugh then. They're still listening to you and they don't want to miss what you're going to say next. If you want to turn it around, you say, you know what I miss? There's one thing that's always been in cards and I miss it now. Fuzzy dice. Pause. Put it there. You did it again in another spot. I noticed that you used the phrase, let me see if I can find it again. What you said was, I ate dirt and I turned out all right. No, turn it around again. I think I turned out all right. You know how I turned out all right? I ate dirt. You put the funny part at the end with a pause so that they've got something. And I think you can do that throughout the entire speech with all of the humor. Make sure that you got the punchline at the end so that you can stop talking and they can laugh. Because otherwise they want to listen. They don't want to miss a word. That's, and it's also impolite to laugh over your words, so they're not going to do it. The final thing that I noticed, and it's a very small one, it's an idiom. What you said was, you may now elbow bump your wife. That's not what they're going to say. You may now elbow bump the bride. The phrase is, you may now kiss the bride, not your wife. So you need to change that wording just to match because it stood out for me as being unusual. But definite improvement and a few more tweaks and it will be even better. Keep working on it. And it's going in a great direction. That's it.
Thank you, Mark. Lee, do you have any comments you'd like to share tonight for Karen?
I think everything's really been shared at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So we already know that Lee qualified on time in round robin. It's like, well, we didn't all qualify on time. It was a big evaluation. So going past that, let's talk to the duty holders for this evening. And we're going to go ahead and start with Rob. Weren't you all counter?
I was, and I am. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you. I don't know, for raise of hands, did people hear it when I?
Once.
Once or
Just
twice.
once.
Yeah, once or twice.
Just once.
Okay, because I had probably a handful in there throughout the meeting, so
Or at least
hit and
on me,
miss.
I heard it once.
It's yeah, you heard yours, right? Yeah.
I even saw, for what it's worth, I even saw it shift to your
Screen?
you as speaker view for a second.
Oh, all right. See, and that's what we don't want, but.
It was only a second. It was quick.
So here's my report. And please don't, if you have a clicker, don't click me while I'm reading this, please. So at the beginning, during the duty descriptions, Dagan, you had an during your duty description. Mark Schroeder, during your speech, one of your transitions, which was, it wasn't crazy, but you had, I think, 3 so's within just a minute's time. You also did have something that people sometimes will miss, and that's when you use the word a, but you say ah. And some people might think that that's an actual UH, but it's not. But I do want to point that out. Karen, during your speech, you did have an as well. Tanya, during your first part as Toastmaster, you had an During table topics, Mark Sims, you had an Dagan, you had an a few and the crutch that you've kind of been working on, which was you had a few of those as well. Tanya, in table topics, you were clean. John, you had a couple of during table topics. During this is very odd. We seldom will hear this, but Lee, you had an during your evaluation, and I believe it was partly due to a distraction of somebody coming through your sliding glass door. But it did come out. At that point, you said which we don't hear. So, you know, I don't think that you need to maybe necessarily work on it, but I wanted to note it because it's a rarity. John, you had an as you noticed at the before you introduced me, and you also had an a little bit earlier during your general evaluator, at the beginning of your general evaluator duty. During the round robin evaluations, Tanya, you did have an during that period. Everybody else seemed to be clean through it. And I think that was it. Oh, there was an Tanya, when you were about to introduce Karen at the beginning. But overall, that's pretty good. It wasn't horrible. It allowed us to move with some alacrity. So back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Robert. Now, Mr. Sims is our grammarian and our posture monitor. So will you give us your report, sir?
For the posture monitor report, Karen, I noted it, these are all good things that in your speech you stood up and then backed away from the camera so that you were more visible. And you had some very effective gestures such as the sky is falling, the social distancing, and then a couple of the funny things where you imitated drinking from a hose or eating dirt. And then, as mentioned, walking away from the camera at the end. So those were very active gestures that helped your speech. John Vessels, I noted that when you were, I believe when you were evaluating Karen, you did some interesting, when you used the phrase tree of life, some interesting hand flip. I'm probably not getting it totally right. And then Dagan, likewise, when you were evaluating Karen, good gestures, like at one point, a well-pointed finger when you were making your point. Other than that, people, including myself, generally did not have the gestures high enough to be noticed. But again, when you can't do that, that is helpful. As far as my grammarian report, I do not recall any lapses. Use a couple of either different or interesting words or phrases used. In Mark's speech, he used the word tertiary, which I have heard before. I've seen it in one of my examination reports, but we don't use it a whole lot, so that's a way to expand your word power. And then also later on, Mark Schroeder used the word idiom, which I've been called an idiom or something close to that before, but I actually looked it up to see what it was. But it's always good to hear different words. And John Vessels noted that we were going to give Karen an earful, which is a nice, colorful way to, again, spice up remarks. And there is very good usage of the word of the day tonight. And that's my report, Mr. General Evaluator.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Now, a few briefs talks about our meeting in general tonight. We did start like 2 minutes late. Hey, that's life. And Tanya, I did enjoy our theme tonight, Hispanic Heritage Month. And I didn't realize that it started on the 15th and ran to October 15th. So I call it Hispanic Heritage 30 days. No, I'm just teasing because people are just, weird. It's not now, it's the month. It's like it starts on the 15th, as tricky people. But culturally, I think that we all need to get out there and understand that America has always been the melting pot. We've always got multiple cultures here. I don't know this for sure. I'd like to think that America is the biggest mix of cultures of any of the countries around the world. And I like to see that. I'm glad that we have that. One thing I find great about cultures, the one thing that we can all join together on, if you have nothing else and you're trying to find some reason not to be involved, everybody loves food. And all the different kinds of foods that the different cultures provide are one of the great melting points to get us all together. And yeah, we can't. Okay, the big fat man's talking about food again. I don't know where all this is coming from, but it's all that Mexican food, Tex-Mex, and all that kind of stuff. And I've been over on my cruises and had their cultural Mexican food. Yes, it's not Tex-Mex like we're accustomed to, but it's still really good. I've never had any bad food over there either. I'm just trying to figure out what culture a fried Oreo is. Because, I mean, is that the state fair culture? I mean, one of those
Texas.
fried
Probably,
butter. So, all in all, I enjoyed your speech. Not your speech, your theme. Well, I guess it is all speech, but I enjoyed getting on and talking about heritage and the Hispanic Heritage Month. And I didn't realize that they are the largest minority in the country. Isn't that what you said? And that I knew that Spanish is the largest Spanish-speaking or the largest language around the world outside of Mandarin Chinese. So anyway, all in all, thank you very much for your hosting tonight and for your information that you've given us this evening. And now I'd like to move on to the vote for the best of the big three, which include Tanya as our Toastmaster, Rob Giles as our Table Topic Master, or myself as Evaluator. So if we'd all take a moment and do that, I'd like to move on to our business portion of the meeting and ask Mark Sims to take it over. Mr. Sims.
Thank you. One thing I want to advise everyone of is that after the contest last week, I emailed Mary Gomez, and she's actually in charge of the area contest, just to let her know who our participants are. And she reminded me that the contest was Saturday, October 3rd, and it was going to be later in the afternoon, I believe, starting around 3 or 3:30. I'll double check that, but again, keep that date in mind. Of course, we're in the process of renewing on the dues, and again, Dagon's made it very user-friendly to do so, so please do so. Deb was on a little bit earlier and she left. Hopefully she could join, but maybe she had somewhere else to go tonight. And the only other thing is I noticed, Mark, the email that you forwarded to us from the management at Azona's. You're right, that was kind of an interesting message, but I guess that's good that you sent us that, because that kind of gives us some insight into their thinking. So maybe he's having some thoughts about, okay, when we're going to see these folks again. So that's very good information for us to know.
Just a quick piece of additional on that. We looked at it. If once we get into October, we've really only got a total of like 6 or 7 meetings there anyway, because then we're into the holidays and we're away until January. So if something doesn't break in the next 6 or 7 weeks that would get us back in, he would be correct that it'd probably be 2021 before we're back.
Yeah, that could well be. And I would think that their business would still be slow. I think he indicated they were doing a good outside business.
Yeah.
Good, at a better time of the year.
Patio is keeping them going.
Yeah.
Well, Greg Abbott said today that starting the 21st, that restaurants can go to 75% capacity now. So
okay,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the question is, it's really a question of, will people show up? Because I can tell you, I've got somebody who works at Buffalo Wild Wings, and when they went to 50, she said they never reached 50.
Yeah, it's hard to revert back to what used to be normal, because you think, okay, how badly do I want to go out to eat, or how badly do I want to go to that movie? I don't want to be melodramatic, but do I want to risk my life for it? So it's, we all have to kind of get used to what used to be normal.
Well, actually, there's still a lot out there that's being written that's saying that going out to eat is still one of the most dangerous places to go.
It's true. Now, on the other hand, I will also tell you that my friend at Wild Wing said that because of football did bring people back. So maybe sports will bring people back in for them as well at Ozonas.
Could be. I do not know of any additional business. Does anyone have business to bring up?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
So it turns out that you mentioned Devon. Devon, we actually did some business with her this week. She is going to become a member. I don't know if Dagan has actually received a payment, but Dagan has invoiced her. We went through the membership app. So I suspect that we will have Devon as a member very, very soon. Her intent is to start on October 1st since we only have really the one more meeting in September. So she'll start October 1st.
That is great news. Thank you. Rob, yes, sir.
I just wanted to remind everybody, and I will send out an email this evening, that I am again on Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., having a member orientation, which basically means that I'll go over pretty much anything that you want to go over. I mean, I do have a list of things that I've marked, and I'll mark them in the email again, ranging from Zoom to pathways, our meetings, roles, things like that, websites. So if you have any questions about any of those things and you think I might be able to answer them, then please go ahead and chime in sometime between 11 a.m. or 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. Not tomorrow, on Saturday morning. And again, I will shoot out an email with the link and the meeting ID and password. So anybody is welcome. Bring friends if you want.
And are you doing that for the district?
No, I'm doing that for us. But
Awesome.
anybody's welcome to come. I mean, that I obviously I'm only sending that message out to our email group.
You know, your decision, but I bet if you just volunteered for the district or for the area, they'd be very interested in something like that. You might get more business than you want, but thank you for doing that.
I appreciate it.
Does anyone else have any business to bring up? In that case, Dagan, would you please announce the winners?
Okay, sure will. But before I do that, I would like to mention, these places like, El Phoenix, El Chico on the border, that's really all kind of Tex-Mex. So if you really want some true, authentic Hispanic food, you got to find one of those little hole-in-the-wall places that, that serves it. Some of those hole-in-the-wall places you can get some of the best food there. So, and they'll actually have authentic Hispanic, Mexican food. So our winners tonight, our best speaker is going to go to Karen. And our best table topic speaker is going to be John Vessels. And of course, everybody knows that the best evaluators got Lee because he was default. And the best of the big three goes to our Toastmaster, Tanya.
Congratulations to our winners, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. Thank you all again.
All right, we will be stopping the
Thank you.
recording. We'll be stopping the recording in 3, 2,